Monroe County, Representative Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to speak on the code. As I understand it, contains the new funding formula for education. And I wanted to just say I applaud the work of the Basic Education Funding Commission on creating a new formula that counts students. Nearly 24 years ago, this body passed a budget which instituted the policy of hold harmless. And I say nearly 24 years ago because it was on August 3rd that it was passed that year, and it took an extra month of debate to get that passed. Since then, we now have an opportunity to eliminate this policy, which has been punishing the taxpayers of Monroe County and other counties that grew in population for over 2 decades. By implementing the new basic education funding formula in this year's code. Unfortunately, we're not going to do that. Instead, this education code keeps hold harmless in place on level funding and distributes new money through the new formula, which has another hold harmless provision built into it, the 3-year average on student population. The Basic Education Funding Commission's report stated that eliminating the hold harmless clause would result in 320 school districts getting $1 billion less in education funding. That's an average of $3.1 million per district. Put another way, this statement acknowledges that we are shortchanging 180 school districts by $1 billion, which is more than $5.5 million per school district. A month and a half ago, as we were debating House Bill 504, the property tax relief bill, the gentleman from Westmoreland County spoke out against the potential redistribution of wealth that would result from that property tax relief bill. Mr. Speaker, I submit to you that what has occurred over the last 23 years and will continue to occur in the coming years under this proposal is a redistribution of wealth. As taxpayers in the school districts that grew, taxpayers who've been subsidizing the $1 billion overfunding of the shrinking school districts are forced to continue this practice much longer than necessary. Monroe County taxpayers have been forced to liquidate their retirement savings to stay in their homes. They're forced to choose between buying groceries and paying their school property taxes. Some are forced to go back to work at 69 years of age so that they can pay their school property taxes. This overfunding has resulted in school districts with shrinking student populations deferring prudent fiscal decisions. A couple of months ago, I was at dinner with a gentleman from the conventional oil and gas industry, and he was telling me about the school in his district. They have 4 high schools. They used to have 300 to 400 in a graduating class out of each school. Now they have 75 to 100, but they still have 4 schools. He said they really need to consolidate because they have trouble fielding teams and bands and those sorts of things. But economically, they should consolidate, but because they have extra funding, they don't. But we don't want to take $1 billion from these districts and pull the rug out from under them. I hear that and I get that. My question is, why are we giving them more money on top of the $1 billion while admitting that 180 school districts are underfunded by $1 billion? I have an amendment which would allow the 320 districts to keep their $1 billion in overfunding, but would allocate all new money to the districts which are underfunded. Once the underfunded districts are brought up to parity, all money could flow through the new formula and every district would get their fair share of funding that counts students. It's a simple, common sense way to transition into this new funding formula and enable those districts who've been shortchanged for 23 years to get their fair share sooner. It doesn't address the past underfunding, but it at least gets us to parity sooner. So I'll be voting no on this because I would like us to consider that amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.